on the agency budget, judicial branch. We'll start out with Martin DeBoer, KLRD, budget analysis. Did you get lunch?
Thank you, Chairman Committee. My name is Martin DeBoer, Fiscal Analyst with Legislative Research. We do have the Chief Justice and her staff with us, so if you have any questions after I'm done, I'm sure they can answer. First couple of pages are a high-level overview of the agency. I'd like to start on page 7 for the FY24 budget. So the 23 legislature approved a budget of $195.2 million for FY24. There was a reappropriation amount of $1,847 of unspent funds from that year. So the agency submits a revised estimate of $196.1 million. This includes $183.9 million SGF and 2,010.5 FTE positions for 24. This is an all funds increase of $973,046 and an SGF increase of $1 million. Above the FY24 approved amount. That $1 million SGF increase is related to the pay plan shortfall passed by the 23 legislature in SB 25. Absent any supplemental requests, and there was a decrease of $43,385 in their base budget expenditures. There's also an increase of 8.5 non-FTE positions. Those are related to federal funding positions. On the following page, on page 8, you have the governor's recommendation, and the governor includes the agency's budget as presented in her recommendation. I would like to also touch on this page that you have in front of you. This is a supplemental request that was provided to us by the agency related to the cybersecurity. For FY25, the agency estimates approximately $2.9 million to address the cybersecurity. $250,000 of that is being used from ARPA funding. So the request is for $2.6 million SGF, and that involves consulting fees, firewall, data mining, software, hardware, and funding for personnel as well as with 3 FTEs. And with that, I'll stand for questions on 24 or proceed to 25.
Thank you, Martin. Are there questions on 24? Senator Petty.
So Martin, now as I'm looking at this sheet that you provided, so that 2.6, is that a request? That is a request for 24?
This is an amount that was figured after the budget submission on what the cost would be to address it immediately at this time. That is something that you can take into consideration. I just wanted to provide that information for you.
Thank you.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That 8.5 non-FTE position, did you say that was federal related?
Yeah, those are positions related to federal funds and projects and programs related to those federal funds.
Okay, is that federal funds that we're going to continue to have, or is that a one-time deal? Or
is my understanding, and I can look into it some more, but once the federal funds end, if they're not ongoing, then those FTE positions will not be there. They're related, they're tied to the federal funding.
And Martin, for information for the committee, so these are additional fees that came in after they submitted their budget, and these are all directly related to the data breach.
That is my understanding.
Okay. Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At number 2 on the pay plan shortfall, is that what's kind of falling into some of these other, I'm seeing that shortfall, that's kind of something that we'll address in omnibus on that kind of thing? Or?
Well, we've actually been addressing them as we go.
As we go.
Yeah, because it was figured, and I think pretty much every agency was short.
Okay, thank you.
Correct, Martin?
Correct, yes. There are bills introduced to address that.
Okay. Any other questions for Martin? Seeing none, thank you, Martin.
Would you like me to talk about 25?
Yep.
All right. FY25 begins on page 10. The agency requests $222.5 million. This includes $211.4 million SGF and 2,050.5 FTE positions. This is an all funds increase of $26.3 million. This includes an SGF increase of $27.5 million and an increase of 40 FTE positions above the 24 revised number. The request includes a total of $14.4 million in enhancements. Number one, there's $3.3 million, and this includes $1.3 million SGF for hardware, software, cybersecurity upgrades. That includes $230,000 for improved cybersecurity measures for the Information System Services Program, $200,000 SGF for the security hardware. This is for additional physical security at the Judicial Center. You have $225,000 SGF for hardware, software for the Information Services Program. That includes $195,000 for software rentals and $30,000 for information processing equipment. I'm on page 11. There's $2.7 million, including $603,000 SGF for various software licenses. $2.1 million of that is from federal funds, and that is for the migration of the branch storage and softwares associated with Odyssey case management to cloud storage and service platforms. The $603,000 SGF is for additional licenses for software management tools that ensures that the computers are patch compliant and block unwanted applications such as TikTok. And also additional software licenses to increase network security by securing all data of the judicial branch employees by expanded implementation of the technology to all courts of the state. There's additional SQL licenses. There's additional expenditures to review cybersecurity assessments selected for the current vendors for the court. And the agency will use a multi-factor authentication tool for increased security when accessing the VPN and tokens for those who do not have a state agency issued phone. Number two, there's a $100,000 SGF increase for the Access to Justice grant funding, so that increases it from $800,000 to $900,000. Number three, you have $4.5 million SGF and 40 FTE positions for new staff and equipment. There's more detail on that on page 14, is number 4 on page 14. But $4.3 million of that 4.5 is for salaries and wages, $150,000 for personal computer hardware and software support equipment, $12,575 for computer software and maintenance. There's $5.9 million SGF for enhancement expenditures for salary increases for non-judicial employees. This is a 5% salary increase and is designed to offset inflationary pressures. The request includes $250,000 SGF in enhancement expenditures for professional consulting to help implement the recommendations the agency has received from various court committees. There's $250,000 SGF for digital evidence services in the appellate court system. This will allow parties to upload files to be entered into the evidence and saved as a recorded to the case in the e-court system. There's $80,000 SGF for regional training programs. These training programs are for district court judges, and they have not been held since early 2020, and they include subsistence for food and training materials. In their base budget, there are adjustments of $13 million and $16.2 million of SGF. On the following page, page 12, there's a docket fee fund swap, $6.1 million from the docket fee fund, and adds the same amount to SGF. As you remember, docket fee funds now flow to the SGF, so those funds that would have been used for expenditures are being replaced by SGF. There's salaries and wages adjustments of $11.6 million. $6.4 million is for salaries. There's reduced shrinkage by $2 million and increase for judicial retirement by $2.8 million. The remainder of the adjustments are fringe benefits costs. $17.2 million of that is related to SB 229 on the judges' pay that was passed last year. There was an adjustment of $854,411 for contractual services, various contractual services that go on, and a majority of equipment rentals. There was a capital outlay adjustment of $600,000 for equipment purchases, and this is mostly ARPA funding that was used for those. And again, for FY25, the governor includes the agency's budget as submitted in her recommendation. I would like to touch real quick on the very last page. They do have capital improvements. It's page 34, which is the very last one. So for FY '24, these are the same projects that were approved last year. So there's $50,000 in expenditures for the Kansas Judicial Branch Learning Center, and there is $300,000 for the Court of Appeals office space lounge remodel. In FY '25, the request has $350,000 in total, $50,000 to continue the Judicial Branch Learning Center development, and $300,000 to begin the garden level reconfiguration. Those projects were heard by the JCSBC and recommended out. And with that, I'll stand for questions for 25.
Committee questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 8 on page 12, that docket fee fund swap. If I remember last year, we decided that we was going to take that money and put that into SGF, and then we was going to pay. Am I looking at that like on number 9, how much of a deficit would we have? Because at one time, we didn't want to worry about that covering expenses. And now I'm just trying to see how big a gap there is. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say to you there?
If I understand correctly, you want to know,
We took the money here, deleted the 6.1 from the docket fee fund and added it to SGF. So that's where the money come into SGF. So how much money went out of SGF to show that difference in there? Because we was starting to pay those expenses.
as of last year, I can look into that. My understanding of this is that there was 6.1 million that they originally would have used the docket fee funds for, but they don't have that funding because it is coming to the SGF, so they need SGF to be able to expend.
They used to stand on their own, and now they're separate.
Yeah, I think what Senator Fagg's asking is, we replaced the 6.1 with SGF. The docket fees, is that coming in at 6.1, under, over, where's that at? He wants to compare the two.
Okay, I don't have those numbers, but I can look into those.
Maybe Amy does. Okay. Any other questions for Martin? Seeing none, thank you, Martin.
Thank you. And sorry, Chairman, real quick, they do have FY '25 on here as well. So that's a continuation from their FY '24 request, and that comes up about to 1.1 million.
Okay, and committee, this is the extra for the cybersecurity fix. Senator Petty.
So Martin, then, when we're looking at this, both for 24 and 25, we should be considering these additional requests of 2.6 in 24 and almost 1.1 in 25, dealing specifically with the cybersecurity.
They are kind of intertwined. So the 3 FTE positions there are actually 3 of the positions that they have requested in FY '25. They're requesting those early so they can get them integrated. Some of the ongoing expenditures may be part of the FY '25 request as well. So they kind of work together a little bit, but we can definitely piece it out for you.
And I'll just follow up. When I'm looking at the 25 budget and that 2.7 million, that included 600,000 for software licenses. So basically, 2.1 is coming from the feds. But if we look at that 600,000 for software licenses, that would be an ongoing cost that would be incurred. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Martin. Next, we will have Chief Justice Marla Lukert from the Kansas Supreme Court. Welcome to committee, Marla.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was on.
Yes, that'd be fine. Welcome to committee, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to be here. Amy Decker, the CFO for the Judicial Branch. I wanted to clarify a couple items. One on the handout for 25. Those were informational to make sure you knew which were ongoing costs. Our ask is only the 24 column. On the non-FTEs, those are to reflect the nature of those grant-funded positions. So if those grants are not continued, that position would cease. On the docket fee funds, that replacement is to recognize that we have spent down in docket fee fund, so that's continuing that shift to the state general fund funding model. As far as receipts from docket fee fund, or from docket fees, which I believe is what you were asking, those numbers have increased, but have not yet reached pre-pandemic levels.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Amy. This one kind of goes back to computers, so I'm switching on you here a little bit.
Okay.
And didn't we spend a lot of money a couple years ago on computers? Or am I dreaming that? We see so many numbers you don't remember. It seemed like we was really trying, that you was going to have the state-of-the-art computers at the deal.
Mr. Chairman, Mr.
was it-
Chairman, Senator Fagg, I can certainly look into that. What you may be recalling is we've had a multi-year effort to do the centralized case management system across the state. So we have had an investment in that. In addition, we did spend some of our ARPA federal funding on computers during the pandemic. So there was a outlay for that was a fairly sizable amount, which may be what you were calling.
Senator Fagg.
And that's what what is on my mind. So my question is, if we did that, how did we ever have this breach? That's the thing that I'm kind of in my mind, not being a computer expert, compared to other departments. You would have thought we'd have had that with that money we spent when we spent that. So maybe you could help me with that a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, I might let the Chief Justice talk about the security incident if that's permissive.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Do you have other?
Any other questions for Amy while she's here? No, if we have any additional, we'll holler at you. Thank you. Chief Justice, if you'd like to continue.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I hope that was helpful. But good afternoon. I'm Chief Justice Marla Lukert, and thank you, Chairman Billinger and the committee members, for your thoughtful consideration of the judicial branch budget today. All of us throughout the state are deeply grateful for the budgetary support that you have given us over the last several fiscal years. Your support has helped turn around decades of underfunding that resulted in strained resources. And now we're asking for that continued support. Besides our base budget, as you have heard, we are asking some for enhancements. I will highlight 3 of those. And then with the chair's permission, I'll ask Chief Judge Jeff Gehring from the 18th Judicial District in Wichita to testify in support of our request. And then Amy is available to answer additional questions that you might have. But as Amy foreshadowed for me, one of the things I do want to talk about is the supplemental request related to the cybersecurity attack. The second thing would be our request for additional positions. And finally, a cost of living increase in fiscal year 2025 that would help us recruit and retain our judicial branch employees. So turning to the first of those requests, you have heard me now speak about the cybersecurity attack, in my State of the Judiciary address, and know some of the types of things that happened. I have been on an incredible learning curve about cybersecurity since October 12th. And Senator, one of the things that I have learned from that is there is no such thing as an impenetrable computer system. And we see that around us throughout we're just watching the news daily. We see corporations that are throwing millions, if not perhaps even add a B to that. I'm not sure, at cybersecurity, and there still are breakdowns. It is a human system. Human error can result in things. And in addition, there can be technological things that happen. And what we did with the money over the last years, as Amy indicated, was that we did have brought up a statewide system, which does make us end up with endpoints in that system throughout the state. So it actually multiplied our exposure to and risk of attack, which hopefully now we have, especially over the last few months, really added to the protections so that there are layers of protection that begin upon that initial entry, move through the various stages of the computer functions, and include those endpoints on those computers that were added through that ARPA funding. So we have really learned from this attack ways to hopefully disrupt any attempt to a future attempt on us, we hope. But if they get in, we've also done things that will help us, that have helped us segregate data and added protection, layers of protection that hopefully would prevent them from penetrating as deeply as they might try. And we have also done things that would hopefully aid a recovery if we were attacked again. But our understanding, and that we hope everyone understands, is that we should not take an approach that we've now done the steps we need to do. Those things change minute by minute, day by day, and require constant vigilance and constant upgrading. And we learned this in a very hard way, with the cyber attack really shutting down our system. There were costs to all Kansans. Many of those costs were intangible. We kept cases moving, but we were slowed in that process. We were less efficient. We were less able to help our fellow neighbors in the way we wanted to with great service. But we got through that. But there was also this degradation of our morale across the state because we were struggling to provide that service in the way we wanted to. There was also fatigue from the long hours that we had worked. People took on duties that they had never done. I want to express my appreciation to our staff statewide for what they did and facing the enormous challenges. And I especially want to express our appreciation to the Office of Judicial Administration team. They worked round the clock really from those first days, and then 7 days a week and long 12-hour, 14-hour days for weeks upon end to support our district courts. I mention this because the positions that we are asking for today mostly relate to cybersecurity and IT and other positions within the Office of Judicial Administration. And I want to stress to you how critical those are to the functioning of your court in your local community. But there also, of course, was that financial cost. As you've mentioned, it was about $2.9 million. And that included the consulting services of the people I referred to in my State of the Judiciary as the emergency first responders, the people that came in, helped decrypt, helped get us moving forward. And then there were the cybersecurity experts that I'm now calling our physical therapists. They're the people who strengthened our system, helped harden the systems that we were using, and basically helped us get back to where we are today. We did that by adding a new firewall, software and hardware, and those provide those additional layers that I've mentioned. These expenses that are in that estimate also include some temporary hours. We shifted, as you know, to a paper world. And we had to educate people about how to do that. It was amazing how quickly we forget. But now we have clerk's offices with stacks of paper that have to be inputted into that electronic system. And so we're converting the paper to the digital. And we are using some temporary hours in a few of our district courts to do that. I actually forgot to check this morning, but as of the last report I saw yesterday early, we were up to 45 of our 105 counties that are caught up with converting that paper. But I also want to emphasize is that sheet shows you that expenses continue. We know we will incur the expenses of notifying the victims who have had personal identifying information exfiltrated with the data that was taken. We will also have costs that relate to any services such as credit monitoring or anything else we might offer to those people. The data mining continues as we speak, as we're here today. So we do not yet have a good estimate for you of what that cost will be. We hope to have that by omnibus, and we, of course, will be in continued discussions to keep you up to date and also be including you in any discussions about what services we might provide. So we do ask for that $2.6 million to be as a supplemental appropriation. We do ask for that money for two reasons. First, these necessary expenditures have now left us with no margins for any unexpected expenses that we might incur in the future. So we are, frankly, at this point, starting to delay filling positions just to try to build up some of that cushion again. And that, of course, adds to the burden of our already stressed employees. The second reason we've asked for this appropriation is, as Martin pointed out, there are 3 cybersecurity positions in that. Those positions are ones we would like to hire as quickly as possible. So if there was a vehicle for a supplemental in this fiscal year that would allow us to move forward for those positions in the last quarter, we would like to get those people on board and starting to work with us as we move forward. But those positions, if not, are included in our fiscal year 2025 request. So we feel that these are our highest priority. They are positions that we definitely need to continue to as we continue to work to restore additional things that are not yet up. Our appellate case management system, for example, we do have most of our programming that goes on that assists the district courts up and running, but there are some functionality issues that are still being ironed out. So I then will turn to our 2025 budget and highlight the 2 things that I mentioned there. First, we asked for 51 new positions at a cost of just under $4.3 million. Most of those are positions in the Office of Judicial Administration, although some would be in a district court. I do want to mention that just because a position is assigned to OJA does not necessarily mean those individuals would be working in Topeka. Many OJA employees reside around the state. These requests, while admittedly large, represent the last phase of our effort to build an adequately staffed judicial system. Over the past few fiscal years, we have asked for your help in strengthening the system that was suffering and just staggering because of inadequate staffing. In the first year, we emphasized public safety, and we ask you for much-needed court services officer positions. These are the employees who supervise criminal probationers. The next year, you recognize the need for new positions to cover the increased caseloads that we'd experienced since our last judicial position had been created in 2008, and you gave us some new judge positions. This year, we are presenting the last bucket of our rebuilding, and these relate to administrative employees that are needed to support those judges, those court service officers, all of our other employees, as well as your constituents as we provide services throughout the state. So these services, these positions would be the last in this line that would rebuild after we had a long period in which the judicial branch had not received increased staffing despite growing caseloads and despite the emergence of other factors that actually caused our workload to increase. And I would like to explain what I mean by that. So first of all, let me talk about the hole, why the hole is there, I guess, is a way to say that. Because I know you're thinking, well, I think we have authorized some positions. And last year you did fund some repurposed FTE positions, and those were very helpful. And we also had in 23 some other 4 positions that were added to support the critical need of our centralized case payment system. But before those requests of those employees, we had gone several decades where, as a branch, we had received very few new positions. And when we did, they were dedicated to the work on the new electronic case management system. I would point out that we greatly appreciate when we receive those repurposed positions. Thank you. But even with those positions, we still are strained in several areas. And believe me, I do not come to you today asking for these new positions lightly. We recognize, first of all, the importance of taking our current positions and seeing if we can repurpose them. And we have thoughtfully looked at our shrinkage rates and planned for our changing needs. So 11 of the positions we're asking or have in this request are actually a repurposing of current FTEs where these people would be at a higher pay grade than the previous position. Our needs extend beyond these 11 positions, however. And so now I get to what I mentioned as the circumstances that have increased the demand for these positions. One of those circumstances is an explosive growth in the number of self-represented litigants. National data suggests that self-represented litigants make up 80% or more of the individuals appearing in court on some type of domestic and civil cases. For courts to resolve those disputes in a procedurally fair way, we have had to increase the services that we provide. Those include creating forms with instructions and explanations about the law, not providing legal advice, but just education. Second, a portal through which individuals needing protection orders can file documents and access information about not only the law, but also about community resources that are available to them for the issue that brings them to court. We are also in Sedgwick County operating an eviction diversion program, and we believe that program will probably grow to other counties. And we continue to grow our self-help centers that provide resources such as forms and even the computers that are needed for these people to create documents for the court. These processes and many others are just simply necessary to help these litigants navigate the court system. The other increased demand is one that became very clear in the last few months. Kansans expect us to provide their services electronically. It wasn't that long ago that people had to go to the courthouse to get records. But as soon as we lost them on October 12th, we heard the cry across the state, what happened? Why can't I search the records? Why can't I pay my fines and fees online? We have centralized, and that has been great. We have brought uniform services throughout the state. And it brought that convenience that Kansans now expect from us. Internally, within the judicial branch, it also changed procedures. We gained centralized financial oversight of payments and processes. And WorkShare has been a fabulous success. Clerks in one district can help another district. So you have an employee out for a long-term medical issue, clerks in another district can fill in and help out. Or it may be that just ongoing workload requires a long-term relationship between different districts in handling that workload. The electronic system that helps us support all of that requires a lot of IT support and a lot of support in the centralized data system. The third circumstance that I would mention is our growth of the incredibly effective specialty court programs that we have. These programs have grown to where we now have over 30 specialty courts. We are bringing online 3 new courts in a new area. Those are the ones handling the child in need of care areas. We've already got those that are dealing with addiction, both alcohol, drug, and other types of addictions, as well as those dealing with mental health issues. These have been services that take more time. Those courts take a lot of staff support as well as judge hours to make them work well. But they do work extremely well, and I think our state is in a better position because of that. The bottom line is that those strains and those factors mean that we are asking more and more of the relatively small group of people across the street that support our courts statewide. We have to educate those people. We have to provide them with IT support. And we have to do all of the things that are necessary, as well as to support those various programs that I've mentioned. And we are now working on the Civics Education Center for the public that will be housed across the street, but will be directed at all 3 branches of government. My list goes on, and I do need to stop, I know. So, but I would just explain to you that those are important programs, and we need the staff that can focus on the labor-intensive but extremely effective programs. So, as I mentioned before, in that 51, we have created some priorities, cybersecurity being the first, internal IT positions also being very high. Even before October 12th, we knew the importance of those positions, but what's happened since then put an exclamation point on that priority. We are also prioritizing financial oversight positions to help with those controls and auditing of the millions of dollars that our courts collect each year. This budget request then also reflects the myriad of other OJA duties. I finally will turn to that final request, which is that the 5% cost of living increase for our non-judge employees. We are feeling the competitive crunch of inflationary pressure on our job market, especially in some parts of the state. So we do feel that we need this cost of living increase so that we do not erode the incredible gains we've made in the past years. So in just summation, I would say that these dedicated employees that provide these services responded in many ways to the unprecedented situation of our cybersecurity attack. And they prove the reason that they are so valuable to us. We pivoted across the state, and we found ways to provide services to your constituents in an incredibly difficult time. These frontline employees and back office support employees are critical to our court system functioning and running as it needs to. I will, of course, be happy to answer any questions you have, and then, with the chairman's permission, we'll present the testimony of Chief Judge Gehring, and Amy, of course, is also available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing, thank you for your presentation too, Chief Justice. When you said statewide system on computer that made the system more vulnerable, you know, that kind of spooks me a little bit as to was there any conversation about being more localized? I want to make sure we're doing the cost-effective service efficient way that we possibly can. So, I'm sitting here not being a computer expert, and that's for another day. But usually whenever you have a new computer system, usually you need fewer people. That computer system is doing work that other people do. So either our services are increasing, and it'd be interesting in what areas and why. Just a comment I want to make on that.
Yeah, I fully understand, and perhaps poor choice of words on my part, but what I meant by that was the human vulnerabilities that exist. Increase as computers talk to each other across the state. Instead of talking about 5 people sitting in an office in Topeka, for the judicial branch, we're talking about people sitting in courthouses across the state. We have a courthouse in each county, and in 5 counties have 2. In addition to that, court service officers sit in yet another building. That vulnerability existed before the centralized system because we do have to talk to each other, even before that. And we're also talking to the KBI, the Department of Revenue, Department of Family, lots of other state groups. So what I meant by that really was just to highlight the importance of having a good cybersecurity program, because all of those connections and all of those end users each one of those is a vulnerability that we have to make sure we protect. And that's true whether we have a statewide electronic filing system and case management system or not.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Chief Judge, for being here. And you mentioned and I know it's on the list, of the non-judicial salary increase. And so when was the last time that level got an increase?
They got COLAs last year.
They got the COLAs last
They
year.
did.
And what is your percentage of turnover, or the number of positions that you're finding difficult across the state to fill? And I'm sure it's tied to lots of things, but salary has to be one of them.
Amy's going to know that better than I do. I will just tell you that anecdotally, it's in the chief judges I hear from, or the court administrators I hear from, who are talking about difficulty in hiring and retaining, are in our metropolitan areas, primarily Johnson County, Sedgwick County.
Thank you.
But I'm sure Amy can provide you more information about that. We do have a few positions that we've considered are unicorn positions that do make our numbers look a little different. I might just very quickly mention that those are court reporters. We have some court reporter positions that have not been filled for years, but it is important that if that unicorn falls from the sky and Colby, Kansas, that we be in a position we can hire that person, because if you find them, you grab them. But most of our other positions are more flexible with that than that. So.
Mr. Chairman, can Amy share those numbers?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you all for your attention.
Was there any other questions for Chief Justice before she?
Oh, okay. I was going to say I'd be glad to come back if there's something comes up.
Senator Fagg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick one. This 40 FTEs, when you decided that, what if we was to do 20 FTEs instead of 40? And because right now we know when we go out in the marketplace looking for people, everybody's looking for people. And maybe trying to walk into that instead of run into it. Just wanted you to comment on that.
We certainly will adjust to what you do, and we wanted to be transparent and let you know how many positions we felt we needed, so that you understood how our assessment. But certainly we understand that we may need to make adjustments, and we'll work with that. We appreciate whatever
Subcommittee, I might mention, I do have a list of the 40 positions and kind of prioritized which ones they need, sooner than later if we don't do them all. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So you have a question for Amy?
Right. She was going to provide about the shortage of positions, or the positions that are unfilled, I guess, and thank you, Amy.
Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We currently have about 125 positions that are unfilled, which is approximately 6% of our positions. We have been able to fill a number of positions with the increased salaries, raises in the last couple of years. We are finding it easier to find people, not easy, but easier. So we do only have about 6% unfilled now.
And Amy, is that, and as the Chief Judge said, is that mostly in our urban areas? Or is it across the state? Is it?
It's certainly across the state. However, as a number-wise, there are a number in the urban areas because there are higher number of positions there.
Larger need. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Amy. And thank you, Chief Justice Lukert. Appreciate it. Next, we'll have Judge Goring, 18th Judicial District, Chief Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome, committee.
Members of the committee, my name's Jeff Gehring.
And I would ask you just keep it as brief as you can because there's another meeting in this room at 1:30.
I'll give you the Reader's Digest condensed.
Thank you.
I am Jeff Gehring. I'm the Chief Judge of the 18th Judicial District, that's Sedgwick County. I manage the largest judicial district in the state. I want to confine my remarks to the 5% COLA that's included in the FY 2025 budget. It was a very challenging year for staff in 2023, not the least because of the cyber attack. The courts did not close as a result of that attack, and most of the credit for that goes to our court clerks and our court staff. They truly were the front line on that. In Sedgwick County, for that period of time that we didn't have Odyssey, we took paper filings, the old-fashioned way like it was when I started practicing law. And those filings were, collected and stored by the court clerks. And then when we got Odyssey back up and running, all of the paper had to be manually inputted into the system. And we were talking literally desks with stacks and stacks and stacks of pleadings. So the way that we accomplished this, we had help from other resources like OJA, sent people to help us with that. But B, we had to just close the clerk's office for the afternoon for about a 2-week period of time because the clerks had to dig out of that. And at the same time, they're inputting this stuff into the system. New cases are coming, and the work that they normally are expected to do goes on. So they really have truly earned a salary. They are the face of the court. Under all this stress, they still managed to provide customer service to people who were there. They did it with grace and dignity, and I'm very proud of them. We do, to the question before, we do have problems in Sedgwick County obtaining people and filling positions. Anecdotally, my court administrator will tell you that we went through the process 3 different times of hiring clerks. They went through the background check. Great, we got a new employee in on the first day. They just changed their mind and didn't show up and didn't tell anybody about it. That is sort of the new normal in dealing with filling vacancies in areas such as Sedgwick County and Wichita. So whatever you can do to help us be more competitive is greatly appreciated on our end. So with that, I'll stand for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next, we'll have Matthew Keenan, Executive Director of the Kansas Legal Services. Matthew, welcome committee.
Thank you, Senators. I will be about 3 minutes. First, a brief introduction. Kansas Legal Services is 45 lawyers that are lawyers for the working poor. We've been in existence 47 years. We have 11 offices. We have offices in Hayes, Dodge City, Manhattan, Wichita, Kansas City, Kansas, just to name a few. We support the judicial branch's budget as it's been submitted with one important caveat that I'll add in just a moment. A big part of what this budget does for us is something called access to justice. You heard that term used earlier. Access to justice allows us to have attorneys at these courthouses where these pro se filers are coming in and looking for guidance. We have clinics at the courthouse staffed by the Kansas Legal Services attorneys in 9 counties across the state. They include Douglas, Ellis, Franklin, Harvey, Johnson, Miami, Sedgwick, Thomas, and Wyandotte County. So we have attorneys there. They, in some cases, will represent the individuals coming in. In many cases, though, they will try to point them in the right direction, help them navigate the forms, relieve the burden from the court personnel that otherwise have to answer their questions. So that's the first thing that I want to mention. My point about the budget and a caveat is this. The budget that's been submitted does not include something that's in the current 2024 budget, and that is a $200,000 allotment for clinics, expungement clinics that we're currently doing with funding from the 2024 budget. That money is not in the budget. It's not an oversight. It's simply that money was added in the 2024 budget right at the tail end of the session, and it was at a time when they were preparing the budget for 2025, and it simply wasn't added. So the expungement clinics we do is a huge, huge part of what we do in terms of outreach and going to where the clients are. And we had those clinics in McPherson, we had one in Wyandotte County, we had one in Johnson County, and this year we're set to have them across the state, including Abilene, Emporia, Pittsburgh, Topeka, back to Wyandotte County. The $200,000 is money very well spent to the extent that we help Kansans clean their records, get jobs, get better jobs. A lot of those clinics involve driver's license restoration so people can get better jobs and get back in the workforce in Kansas. So I wanted to keep it as brief as I could, but Kansas Legal Services is very dependent upon the money that's part of the judicial budget, and we would hope that the $200,000 would be renewed. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Questions? Hey, Matthew, if you've got time for one question, please. Senator Fagg.
Thank you for your presentation. One quick question.
Sure.
So you got all these, do you keep track how many people you've actually helped?
Oh, absolutely.
You know what that
Yes, yes. Last year, when you include not just the clinics, not just the standalone clinics in the courthouse, about 20,000 Kansans were directly assisted by our attorneys or the paralegals. And those numbers are on our website. But obviously, with the proliferation of the pro se and self-represented litigants, I mean, that's our sweet spot, and that's what we try to do. We try to help those individuals navigate this legal system. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Matthew. Committee, I'd point out we have written only from Kansas District Judge Association, and we have written from Kevin Warning, Kansas Association of Court Service Officers. That is all we have on the list for today, committee. So we'll close this hearing and we will open our hearing on the Human Rights Commission. We'll start out with Nicole.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Nicole Renscher with Legislative Research Department. I will be going over the Kansas Human Rights Commission budget. Just a little bit of background. The mission of the Kansas Human Rights Commission is to eliminate and prevent illegal discrimination based upon protected traits in areas of employment, housing, and public accommodation. Under the Kansas Act Against Discrimination and its federal counterparts, individuals must file a complaint of discrimination with the agency, which is then required to investigate and attempt to resolve the complaint prior to the individual being afforded the right to sue. The agency is responsible for educating the public on acts of discrimination. If you could turn to page 4, I just wanted to go over real quick some of the funding. The Human Rights Commission receives funds from the State General Fund. Their expenditures have remained in the 1 to 1.1 million range. Page 5 shows the Employment Discrimination Federal Fund, which is an account that results from the agency's annual contract with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission to process and resolve complaints of discrimination that are jointly filed under Kansas statutes and federal regulations. And then if you would turn to page 7, we can get started on the 24 analysis. So subsequent to the 2023 session, an adjustment was made to the $1.5 million appropriated to the Human Rights Commission. This adjustment, the agency $54,000 in unspent SGF monies. The agency submits a revised estimate of $1.5 million, including $1.1 million SGF and 20 FTE for fiscal year '24. This is a decrease of $56,000 or 3.5% below the amount approved by the '23 legislature. The revised estimate includes $5,000 for a pay plan shortfall. Absent the supplemental request, the revised estimate includes a decrease of $35,000 from an SGF lapse due to the agency not upgrading two of their access databases and instead using a free EEOC database. Turn to the next page, page 8, all their other adjustments. Agency deleted $25,000 in other adjustments. Governor concurred with the agency's revised estimate in fiscal year '24. Are there any questions for '24, or I can move on to '25?
Committee, any questions on 2024? Seeing none, please proceed.
I did also forget to mention we have Executive Director Ruth Glover here in the audience to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you.
So fiscal year '25, the agency requests $1.7 million, including $1.2 million SGF and 20 FTE for fiscal year '25. This is an increase of $140,000 or 9.2% from the fiscal year '24 revised estimate. This request is due to $79,000 for enhancement requests. Mediation program number 1, the agency requests 20,000 SGF, allowing the Kansas Legal Services Midland mediation contract to be increased from $115,000 to $135,000. And then there's option 2, mediation program number 2. The agency request includes 59,000 SGF, allowing the Kansas Legal Services contract to be increased from $115,000 to $174,000. This increase would allow Kansas Legal Services to use its contracted mediators on a more consistent basis. So this request is inclusive of the previous request. It includes that 20,000 SGF, and it is an ongoing request. Absent the enhancement request, the request includes an increase of $66,000 in base budget expenditures due to shrinkage reduction, staff augmentation recruitment, state building charges. And then on page 11, governor's recommendation, she recommends $1.7 million, including $1.2 million SGF for fiscal year '25, the decrease of $20,000 or 1.2% below the request due to the governor not recommending the enhancement for mediation program number 1. Okay, I can stand for questions.
Thank you. So does that mean that she accepted number 2 in place of 1?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, she accepted number 2 in place of 1.
Okay, questions? Seeing none, thank you, Nicole. Next, we'll have Ruth Glover, Executive Director of the Kansas Human Rights Commission. Ruth, welcome committee.
Good morning, thank you. I guess good afternoon now. We did provide a handout that provides an overview of the Kansas Human Rights Commission. Just as a refresher, we're the state's anti-discrimination agency. So what we do is we accept complaints of discrimination in employment, housing, and public accommodations. So that means that we protect people where they work, where they live, and where they consume goods and services that are offered to the public. We have 2 main ways of achieving our mission. First of all, we accept complaints of discrimination, we investigate them and work to resolve them. And then secondly, we do public outreach in the hopes that if people can learn what discrimination and harassment are, then it won't occur in the future. We have some highlights from fiscal year 2023. In fiscal year 2023, we received 1,032 complaints in that year. That was 233 more complaints, or a 29% increase from the previous year. We were able to resolve 830 complaints, but we did have staffing shortfalls in fiscal year 2023. We had a couple of employees retire in fiscal year '21, and then a couple of employees quit in fiscal year '22, and so that just kind of followed us through to fiscal year '23. And in October of this last year, we were at full staffing, and everyone was had completed their training periods. We did recover $1,207,000 on behalf of individuals who had filed complaints. Those are payments that are made directly from the responding organizations, usually employers, to the employee who has filed some type of complaint. In fiscal year 2022, we also trained 11,000 individuals. That was mainly through our online harassment program, where 9,510 individuals completed the online harassment training program. And probably the most significant part about the online harassment training program is that 91% said that they have a full understanding of harassment after they completed the training program versus 66% before they completed the training program. On page 3, you'll see a review of our funding resources over the last several years. I always use fiscal year 2008 as kind of a benchmark because after that we received a lot of state general fund cuts as tax revenues decreased. But if you look on line 2 with the governor's budget recommendation, we'll receive $613,000 less state general fund revenue than what we did in 2008. That's 34% less than what we received in 2008. Total funding on line 6 will receive $525,000 less in total funding than what we did in 2008. That's 24% less than the 2008 level. And in fiscal year 2008, we had 34 FTE, whereas we're authorized 20 FTE in fiscal year 2025. So that's 41% less FTE than what we had in 2008. And actually, we're only looking to actually fill 17 positions, so that's even less than the 41%. So I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ruth. Questions? Senator Petty.
I think these are interesting statistics you just shared with us. So when you shared the reduction in your budget as well as your number of employees since 2008, and then prior to that, you mentioned the number of complaints that you had and that had been settled in the last year. I'm just curious, have you, as you used this chart comparing those other two things, have you done that same thing as the number of complaints increased since 2008?
If you look on page 4, there's actually kind of a history from about 2007 through 2023. So the last several years, we have pretty much consistently received 900 to 1,000 complaints per fiscal year. And then on the lower level, you'll see that we've consistently resolved. In years when we had full staffing, we were resolving 900 to 1,000 complaints per year. Our resolutions went down when we started experiencing vacancies in our special investigator positions. But as of October, we had all those special investigator positions filled. Everybody had completed their training periods. And we've been maintaining 7 special investigators, but actually we're in the process of adding an 8th special investigator.
Thank you.
Other questions for Ruth? Seeing none, thank you, Ruth. Appreciate you being here today. Committee, we are scheduled to do deliberations tomorrow, so we'll do the deliberations tomorrow. Martin, do you know what time that is tomorrow? Tomorrow at noon. Okay. Any questions, committee? Seeing none, we're adjourned.